Well, everybody, it's the end of the year. 2023 is coming to a close, and like last year, we got to say goodbye to yet another beloved muscle car. What's up, everybody? How's it going? My name is Nick Lanza, and if you're new around here, we do builds, reviews, and have candid conversations about cars. So if that sounds interesting enough to you, please consider subscribing, and if you do, hit that bell notification button so you get all of our video uploads. If you're like me and you grew up in the United States, you more than likely started out as a big fan of muscle cars. For me personally, I was a big Mopar fanboy growing up, and I absolutely loved cars like the Challenger and the Charger. In fact, I would argue it's still my dream to be able to own one of those kind of cars someday, get like an old Coke bottle Charger and do a resto mod type thing to make a Plymouth Superbird out of it or something like that. The truth of the matter is I needed American muscle cars in order to become the avid enthusiast of other vehicles that I am today, because they were my gateway into this vast world. However, sadly, over the last few years, more and more of our muscle cars are falling off of the map. They are no longer being produced or are being replaced entirely by EVs. And now Chevy has come out and said that the Camaro will no longer be sold. Don't get it twisted. The Camaro is going out in style, having one of the nicest and coolest trim options I think they've ever come out with. But with sales as low as 30,000 units being sold this year, it makes sense that they are wanting to move on to something else. In addition to the poor numbers, the fact that a number of these muscle cars are being sold to clout chasers who can't keep up their bills, and thus dealerships are reselling a lot of the same VIN numbers over and over again, it makes sense that Chevy is going to turn around and no longer sell them. It's more expensive to make them than it is to make profits on them, because the people that they're trying to sell to can no longer afford them. It's just tragic to me, because as much as I gave people grief about muscle cars and whatnot after I got into tuners, my dad was a big Camaro fan, and even he was shocked when I talked to him about it the other day. In fact, right before I got diagnosed with COVID again, we had sat down and I was chit-chatting back and forth about the state of cars, and I brought that up. And he couldn't believe it, because his understanding was that the Camaro was doing well. It was selling well, and more people were starting to get into sports cars, because from what we see in our area, that's pretty accurate. GR86s everywhere, GR Corollas, things like that with Toyota. Then you've got a lot of the newer Nissans floating around, and plenty of muscle cars. But the more we sat there and thought about it, we realized a lot of the muscle cars we've been seeing aren't Chevys, aren't Dodges, they're Fords. In fact, I'd argue that the muscle car category in the United States has shrunk all the way down to just the Mustang. It's hard to believe, because we had muscle cars in our lives for several generations, starting with the earliest muscle cars in the 50s and 60s, all the way up until the boom in the early thousands when people were wanting to buy these kinds of cars again. There have been generations of people who have had them in their lives, and now we're going into 2024 with just one. For people like myself, it's a shock to the system and a reminder that we are in very much ever-changing times, and there's a good chance that we'll never have muscle cars the same way again. So that begs the question, if Chevy were to try and bring back some form of muscle heritage, how should they go about it? Because the truth of the matter is, unless they revive the Camaro name the correct way and they don't pull a Blazer where they make a bloated Camaro into an SUV, what's the best way for them to go about this? Even my dad and I both sat there and agreed that right now the best things on the market as far as sales go are trucks, minivans, and SUVs. But also, in just the car category, there's been a lot of four-doors floating around lately. In fact, I'd argue that the Germans are the ones who really figured out the family saloon method the best. Over the years, we've seen nothing but great successes out of BMW as far as sales go for four-door cars, and also by proxy, two-door coupes with a back seat. And from companies like Audi, they've had great success with things like the RS6 Avant, the R7s, and all these other ridiculously fast, fun, yet still usable and capable family cars, saloons, four doors, five doors, hatchbacks. In other words, the Germans have figured out the people moving thing Better than Americans have figured out the people moving thing. That begs the question, what is my solution for Chevy? I'd say bring back an old muscle car name that we haven't seen in a long time, put a big engine in it, and pay homage to what they once had. I'm talking about bringing back a name like the Chevelle, or maybe even the Impala if you wanted to go a nice luxurious route and give it to Cadillac. Giving GM a proper four-door car at this stage in the game with muscle car background would be probably the best thing ever for them. At the very least, the announcement of it would do some good, especially because the C8 has had a lot of great success, but it's very quickly being overshadowed by other things coming up the pipeline. And while it had a big boom right before the Garage 56 Camaro came out, it's really not been in a lot of ways made sense. And while yes, there's been other news that's been really interesting and exciting to hear about, such as a Hyundai doing well in rally and the fact that Renault is apparently coming back to the United States, the Camaro has just kind of fizzled out of the limelight, except for this really nice trim option that they're offering one last time. In other words, if Chevy wants to right the ship, they need to make an announcement of a new model that is desirable, and more specifically, not an EV. More and more we're finding that EVs are becoming less and less popular, and it's quite frankly because of the White House. While politics is something we don't like to touch on this channel due to a number of reasons, it is very true that this White House and administration really pushed for people to get EVs. And whether you voted for who's in office or not, the desire for EVs has really only been centered around cities. People out here like I am in the country, we don't want EVs, we want gas guzzlers because that's the only way we can get around and know for sure that we can get around. Our reliance on old fossil fuels is kind of by proxy of the fact that we live so far away from city centers and places where reliable power is always consistent. In fact, even in some of these major cities, things like brownouts throughout San Francisco have deterred a lot of us away from electric cars, myself included. I was actually considering getting one of the Tesla sedans until I realized that, you know, my power bill would quadruple overnight, and I can't afford that right now. So getting back to the point, if Chevy were to replace the Camaro with an EV, they'd have to make it one really impressive EV or not do it at all. Because if they do make the EV, it needs to be able to knock the socks off of something like the Mach-E, and if they don't, it'd be the best way to respect such a beloved name in muscle car history, and honestly in American history. But enough jabber out of my mouth. What do you guys think? Do you think that Camaro was overdue for retirement, or do you think that they should go the EV route? Let us know down in the comments section, and above all else, we hope you guys have a wonderful, happy, and safe holidays, and I pray you guys would wish me a good recovery, because I'm still in recovery from getting the old Rona again. I don't know how, because I've been quarantined at home this whole time, but you know how it goes. Without further ado, God bless y'all, and we'll see you guys in 2024. Peace.